Welcome to episode 2 of Spiders Sound Off, your weekly home for all things Richmond Spiders basketball.
We are two Spider alums, season ticket holders, and diehard fans, breaking down the games, the players, and the stories behind the stats.
This is Tom.
And this is Porter.
And we are going to kick off today. We're going to talk a lot about the news around Spider basketball. But before we do that, Porter, any reflections on our first episode?
There's a few reflections. I heard a couple pieces of feedback. Number one, I should have said when talking about Eugene Burroughs' legendary 2 free throws that Len Elmore said there's no blink in those eyes either, which I did not say. But actually I didn't know he said that. So thank you for that feedback from that random Spider fan.
I got some feedback as well from we'll call him Dr. Durham. He had a little quote. If you remember, Porter was talking about winning the national championship. I said that was ridiculous. Dr. Durham said, Porter is for sure delusional if he thinks the Spiders were ever going to be anything more than an occasional Cinderella.
I have been called worse, but thank you, Dr. Durham.
And one of my other friends, we'll call him Nutzel. His request was more Beeline talk. So I think getting the Beeline era even more focus is what Mr. Nutzel is looking forward to.
We also had a comment on Reddit that basically agreed with Dr. Durham that you were right and I was wrong about the aspirations for the program. One other thing we wanted to talk about, so we talked a lot about the 91 team being their 35th anniversary. We're also going to do some segments during the course of this year on the 2011 team that went to the Sweet 16, that great team. We talked about it just a little bit on the first podcast, but look for some future content around that 2011 team and their magical season as well.
So we're going to start off. We talked about doing some news, really the big news in the past week as we got into July. And a lot of you, I'm sure, have read articles on it already, is the new settlement between the NCAA and former players, and that being kind of official as of July 1st of this year.
And I'll say this, neither Tom or I are lawyers, and neither of us are experts on this matter. However, I do have an accountant from the E. Claiborne Robbins School of Business who happens to be very good at forensics accounting, who has looked into a lot of this information, and he's going to try to break it down for us today so that we understand a little bit about what's in this settlement. So, Tom, why don't you tell us what you found?
Sure. And I'm going to keep this high level because the details get more and more confusing. But the first thing people need to remember, and it's really not talked about a lot on sports radio right now, this is a settlement between the NCAA and former players from 2016 to 2021, kind of before the NIL world came. And the settlement is for these former players to be paid for their work during that era before NIL came about. There's going to be a total of $2.6 billion paid to all of these players over time. And the one thing to be clear, the NCAA was not sitting around with $2.6 billion of past profits that they just happen to have in their bank account. That money is going to be funded from the Division I universities that have sports. Now, the Power 5 schools are going to pay more than the Atlantic 10 schools because football is a big part of the calculation of that 2.6.
Quite a difference in revenue for those schools
that's right.
as well, especially with football.
But in the long run,
to fund the settlement, that is.
To fund the settlement, and to pay former players. And there's going to be a calculation to pay those former players based on if there was similar revenue sharing like there is going forward during that time period, how much revenue would your school have been paying to your players? So it is not the same for every university.
Okay.
And to be clear, Richmond, like every Atlantic 10 school that I have found, has elected to join this settlement. I mean, you could have taken the option to be like, we're not going to be part of that settlement. Anyway, so Richmond's part of it. We're going to focus on Richmond here. The thing that everyone is talking about is that the settlement has, for the first time, given schools the ability to pay players directly. There's a salary cap, in a sense, put into this, which grows every year. And that's the number, if you looked into this or listened to people talk about it, it's $20.5 million. That $20.5 million is, think of that as if you're a Big Five school That is not what Richmond's going to be spending on its athletics or its players.
But they could. It's just
They could.
It's out of the range of what's real for us based on the revenues that our
That's right.
sports bring in.
There's an important part. You should be thinking of our athletic department as until this happened, it was a break-even department.
Okay.
So the revenues that we got, the donations that we got, which were for the Spider Fund, funded coaches, funded the Robin Center, funded the administrative staff. It was a break-even business. Think of it as, there weren't, if there were profits, they were small, and some years it would be a loss. And now to pay players, that's additional expenses you're going to have as an athletic department. So the question comes, where does that money come from?
But I think you and I both agree that paying players is actually a good thing, given the efforts that they put in on the court.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, there's no judgment here.
The building the brand for the university. Right. We're not against paying players.
No, not at all. The question is, how much can you raise to pay players? Now, before we get into kind of how would that happen, there is still the NIL, the name, image, and likeness. That still exists. We have the Spider Collective, which has funded that in the past. The big difference is part of the settlement. There is now governance to that. I think the last few years, NIL was kind of the wild, wild west.
Okay.
You could put money in the collective with, working with the coaches would pay players for their services as a player, but there wasn't really NCAA government on those deals.
Let me just take this moment real quick to insert to that. As a Richmond Spider Athletics fan, I want to thank the folks behind the NIL collective, because you guys have been super impactful at helping us stay competitive across all sports, really. And you'll never hear us complain about you guys spending your hard-earned money to help Richmond sports. We thank you for it. You're always a friend of the show, and you're always welcome on the show if you want to come talk to us about the NIL.
Yeah, that's right. And so the governance now, it said that if there's a deal, kind of a contract with a player of over $600 and needs to go through a clearinghouse, they've hired Deloitte to help manage that clearinghouse. And they're going to be assessing, and there is a list of criteria in the settlement of assessing whether that deal is fair market value. So you can still pay someone to help advertise for your business, and players can get paid for that, or for, you think of when their name is on a video game or their likeness is in a video game, they still get paid for that, but it's going to be a market value payment versus I'm just going to pay as much as I'd like, even though it's not kind of the market value for that.
So the auditor could basically say this is an illegal payment, or
that's right.
This is an unfair payment.
And the settlement goes through kind of what those options are. Again, there is a governance body that will help manage that. But I don't think that's something we should be worried about here. I think the question is what does Richmond do? And the one data point that's out there for the Atlantic 10, the VCU's athletic director earlier this year said that they were expecting to spend $5 million on their sports.
Okay.
And that's paying their players. And again, they don't have football. So most of that was going to go to men's and women's basketball.
Did they say how they were going to raise that money?
They did not say that at all.
I thought I heard they were going to run concerts out of the
they are adding that. They didn't say we're going to raise $5 million by running concerts. It's not going to raise that much money. But yeah, they're looking at revenue opportunities. So I think that's what we should be expecting. Let me read you a couple quotes. First, our press release from University of Richmond back in February about us opting in to the settlement. It says, as permitted by the terms of the settlement, Spider Athletics will begin providing direct payments to men's and women's basketball student athletes for the use of their name, image, and likeness. So it's very specific on basketball. And it says payments to men's and women's basketball will be sourced from philanthropy and additional athletic revenues. It also says that Spider student athletes in programs other than basketball will remain eligible to receive external NIL income subject to NCAA rules. So really a basketball focus to what the university will be paying to athletes. Also, in a more recent press release put out by Richmond, by the athletic department, it says we're working to develop new opportunities to engage with Richmond athletics, including original experiences that will allow fans to interact with the Spiders like never before. And then they also are appealing to kind of all of our generosity and, renewing season tickets, honoring your favorite team with a donation, assisting with NIL efforts, becoming a regular visitor to richmondspiders.com, etc. So it's certainly an appeal to fans to get more engaged to help in this effort. So, Porter, I am curious what you think about how we could generate more revenue.
Yeah, that's a great question. As you read that press release to me, Tom, I think the thing that is most apparent is donations to the Spider Athletic Fund. That seems to be a way in which we as fans can contribute to the program that we love to help bridge any potential revenue needs. There are other ways to raise money. I think, you could rename the Robins Center. You sell the naming rights, but I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think the University of Richmond is going to take the Robins name off that building. The Robins family's been too generous to the university over these years. There's probably agreements in place. But there are some programs in the A10 that might go that route of selling the naming rights to the building. That would probably be a lot of money, but I don't think it'll happen.
And the easy example, well, I may have a parking pass for a lot, whatever, B32, and they could make that the CarMax lot. There are other ways. And again, does that raise, $5,000? That's not going to raise $5 million. But
when I said the women's team was the best value in town last episode, what you're preparing me for is that there could be a small chance that it's still the best value in town, but it might be slightly more expensive. Is that fair?
Yeah, and if you look at the total revenues that's been reported,
still pay it.
Yeah,
I would still pay
when you
it.
look at total revenues that are reported for the entire athletic department, and they do some of this reporting for Title IX reasons. Not this current fiscal year that ended, but the prior one, it was the number reported was $47 million. So that's for all sports.
That was our athletic.
That's the revenue and expenses were kind of the same. So think of like all donations that came into the school for that were directed to Spider Sports.
Okay.
And revenues from the games, from TV contracts,
total budget,
from NCAA, all of that stuff. But that's you think there's another $5 million they need to raise on top of that. And so the way I think about it as a finance person, and this is not you never do this kind of just across everything, but if that's a 10% increase in revenue, roughly, you look at the $50 per season ticket. Like it would be more than reasonable if that went to $55. It's 10%. But anyway, there are decisions. Some I'm sure they've made. Like we'll be getting our emails in the next probably month about renewing our season tickets. And so we'll know soon enough whatever the impact is there. But
what they decide. We're speculating, folks. It's important for us to say this. We haven't had a conversation with the university to figure out how they're going to help fund the excess revenues to be competitive at this level. What I can tell you is it doesn't matter for me. I'll be paying it because I love the product and I'm going to be in the Robins Center rooting them on. And if you buy an extra concession or two, that only helps the program. So think of it that way. Next time you get in line, the money is going oftentimes to the player.
Yeah, that's right. That's a new thing this year that there will, when you're spending money at the Robins Center, spending for tickets, spending for parking, there is money now it's part of that budget, which is going to pay players so we can have a competitive team. But anyway, that's a lot on a topic which we're going to learn so much more of in the next year as well, because every school is in the middle of trying to figure this out.
Yeah.
We don't know all the answers. We'll see kind of how much Richmond discloses what they're doing during the year or after the year. A lot to learn and kind of match it up against the other A10 programs.
What's important is that, there's a method to the madness. To stay competitive, you have to raise more revenue that, ultimately lead to a competitive product on the court.
Yep. Let's talk about other news. That's a whole lot on one big topic. But I know we've had a lot of Richmond players or ex-players in the news lately. So what's been going on, Porter?
Well, first, let's talk about Kenny Atkinson. So Kenny Atkinson, as you guys know, just a tremendous Spider point guard and very successful post-Spider career coaching in the NBA and among other things, has been named the Coach of the Year, NBA Coach of the Year for last year, coaching the Cleveland Cavaliers. So I don't think we can do any justice to the accomplishments that Kenny has had outside of Richmond, but just want to say on this podcast, being a Spider for life, we're super proud of what he's accomplished, and it's always really exciting to see a Spider do well. Yeah. Good job, Kenny. Next up, the Mooney coaching tree is growing significantly this year. There have been 3 Spider players who played under Mooney who have now head coaching jobs at the D1 level, starting with Kevin Hovde. If you guys remember, Hovde was a walk-on for Richmond, earned a Scally after his first year, was on that Sweet 16 team we're going to talk about some in 2011. He is now the head coach at Columbia, so that's super exciting. So good job, Kevin. We're going to be rooting for. We're going to be Columbia fans as long as it's not playing against our Spiders. Also, Zach Chu, who came in right after Hovde, played in the 2011 to 15 timeframe, has been named the head coach at Radford, which is that's a great gig. So Zach Chu doing good things in his post-college career. I have a good friend, by the way, and just a personal note that is in the Radford Hall of Fame, Don Burgess, who was one of their great basketball players in the early 90s. So good luck, Zach, at Radford. And then Dan Giroux, Iona. He was a Spider, a key part of that Spider Sweet 16 run in 2011, and just a great all-around player. So he's got the head coaching job at Iona. So three great representatives of the University of Richmond branching out.
And he spent a lot of time in the NBA as well, right, as a coach. I think he was kind of with the Cleveland Cavaliers for a while.
All of these guys have just impressive backgrounds and impressive track records on their way up to getting a head coach gig. But I mean, these are relatively young guys, and I think it speaks to just the quality of not only the player but the mind that Coach Mooney brought in to have three guys getting head coaching jobs that were Richmond undergrad players. That's fantastic.
Okay, so Porter, you're going to have to explain to me what the Virginia Sports Information Director Awards are.
Yeah,
so it's a mouthful.
Yeah, the VASID Awards. I'm not sure if that is an acronym that people are familiar with, but a couple exciting announcements that came out of that. Two of our women's players, Addie Budnick and Maggie Dugan, were recognized as with all state selections. The VASID Award it's nominated and voted on by sports information directors or their representatives from various colleges and universities across the state. Addie was all second team. Maggie was all first team all state. And Addie was also the defensive player of the year. In just a second, because I don't know, I just want to talk Addie for a second since she graduated this last year. What a great all-time Spider, five seasons playing for us. I mean, I don't think it would be controversial to say, she's going to make the Hall of Fame. I mean, I think that's a statistical certainty. She just has such a storied career at Richmond. We'll have more on her as the season goes on, but I just want to thank Addie for helping bridge the new team to the old team and being the cornerstone of that. I look forward to when you get inducted in the Hall of Fame, and I think quite possibly we're going to see your number retired in the Robins Center someday too. That's just you're just such a fine representative of the university. So I wanted to say that about Addie before I talk more about the VASID Awards. I do have one beef with the VASID Awards, if you'll indulge me for a second.
Yes, please. Yeah, I want to hear any controversy you got.
Okay, so I cannot wrap my mind around the fact that Maggie Dugan did not win Player of the Year in Virginia. And I've looked at it from a couple different ways. And this isn't to take anything away from Kamora Johnson, who is herself an unbelievable player for the University of Virginia, first team All-ACC, a great, great player. I think as a sophomore this year, just had an unbelievable year. UVA went 17-15. They were 73, I think, in the net going into the NCAA tournament. We were 32 in the net going into the tournament. Of course, we were 28-7. You could make the argument that, Maggie had a great supporting cast in the aforementioned players, and so maybe that's why they didn't give her the Player of the Year. But if you look at the metrics, she was the best player on the best team in the state of Virginia, and I think should have been the Player of the Year. And to give you a couple more data points, so one common opponent we had was with UVA was Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech beat UVA by 13 on their home court, on UVA's home court. We, of course, beat Georgia Tech by 25 in the tournament. Maggie went for 30 points, 15 rebounds, 6 assists in that game. But there's a stat that we'll talk about a lot this year with the women's program as we've learned more about how to analyze different things. And that stat's called BPM. Have you heard of BPM, Tom?
I have not.
So BPM is an advanced stat in basketball, and it stands for something called box plus minus. It's using the box score to kind of assess the overall input of a player on a team. And it's something that I think kind of sounds like WAR in baseball, if you're familiar with WAR, which is wins above replacement. It's trying to boil down, a player's contribution to one single number. And like any stat, it's not perfect, right? But it is a way of saying, hey, this is their defensive contribution. They'll give you the exact definition. It's an advanced stat that estimates a player's contribution to their team's point differential per 100 possessions. It essentially measures how many points a player adds to their team's score compared to an average player over a typical game length. A positive BPM indicates they're above average, while a negative BPM suggests that maybe they're below average. So it's just a stat, right? But Maggie was plus 13 last year, which is just a really, really good stat, really good number for BPM. And Kimura, while a fantastic player, was 8.9. I mean, even Rachel Ulstrom was 10.9. So, there's just so many ways to look at Maggie as being the best player in Virginia. I know she's super happy because she's so humble of being just nominated to first team All-State. But as a fan-driven podcast, I think I'm allowed to say I'm disappointed she wasn't Player of the Year.
Now, that's one award she didn't win. But she did get recognized in other ways this summer, right, Porter?
She did, yeah. So, I mean, I think I mentioned in the first podcast, I watched Maggie, Rachel, Allie, and Sam Dewey play the 3-on-3 tournament. They were fantastic, by the way, out west in California. Maggie got nominated to the USA Basketball Women's AmeriCup trial, which is a huge deal. She tried out against 20 or so of the best players in the country to represent the USA. It's the precursor kind of for the Olympics. And she did not make the team, but being the only mid-major player that was invited is a huge honor. And Coach Roussel was also honored with an invite to coach the U19 team out there at that same venue. So two great honors for a program that is really becoming just incredibly fun to watch and be excited about.
Yeah, that's awesome. And more to come for both of them, right? This is going to be a big year, and more awards I expect are coming their way over the next 12 months.
I mean, I think so. I mean, I don't want to put too much pressure on the women's team because, they've got a big expectation already levied against them. But I keep saying it, guys, get your tickets to see the ladies play this year. You will be grateful that you did. They're just that good.
Okay, last thing from a news standpoint, and this is kind of breaking news too. So I know Porter has had trouble sleeping the last few days because of the disappearance of the Spiders message board. He was a big user of it. I've been there here and there. It was a great place to see what was going on with recruiting, ways to kind of hear concerns and hear celebrations by lots of dedicated Spider fans, both basketball. There was also kind of a football part of that. But Porter, how are you surviving? What's going on? Tell us more.
Yeah, so for those of you guys who might not know about the Spider message board, it was on Rivals, and it was just a community for your most diehard fans to talk sports. It oftentimes kind of went over the top in terms of complaining, but it was a great place to kind of hear from some of the most plugged-in minds around the program. On3 and Rivals either have merged or On3 has acquired Rivals, and currently they're trying to navigate how to move message boards over. I know that the people affiliated with the message board are trying to negotiate something. A small group of fans has splintered off and started a message board on Reddit. It's not quite as built out yet as the old message board, but that's something. And then I've heard rumors of an Apple message board at some point in time in the future. So all I'll say is stay tuned to our podcast. We are talking to the folks who are involved in that kind of stuff. And so we'll give you guys updates as they come out on where you can, for you diehard Spider fans, where you can talk Spider sports. So we'll keep you informed.
And however you're listening to us, please comment there. We're happy to have discussions. I know Spotify, Apple have commenting options. So does YouTube. We also have social media. So if you want to, have discussions there, we will certainly take part of it. But we're not intending to be the future message board through those services. So hopefully there's a good answer there at some point.
Yeah, like, subscribe, share with your friends, tell people about us. we're just happy to be talking about the program we love, and we hope that we provide a little bit of value to everybody who listens.
We're going to follow up with our next episode talking about our off-season grades for men's and women's, which will really be a focus of the transfers that came in. Some more to come on that, but I think that's going to do it for this week on Spiders Sound Off.
Thanks, everybody.
Try to be funny and entertain. Make